Welcome to the Aesthetic Business Masters podcast, the show where we explore what it really takes to build, scale, and sustain a successful business in the aesthetic industry. I'm your host, Nicole Montgomery, and in each episode, we talk with industry leaders, innovators, and educators who are redefining what's possible in aesthetic business. Today, we're diving into two fascinating and truly transformative topics: treating the skin holistically and mastering the mindful consultation process. My guest is Tatyana, National Sales and Education Manager for Skin Suite Australia. With a background in psychology, human nutrition and functional medicine, Tatyana brings a powerful blend of science, empathy and practical expertise to how we can understand skin health and client care. Let's get started. Tatyana, welcome. It's wonderful to have you on the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited for this session.
So to get started, we're just going to have a couple of icebreakers. So what you need to do is basically just answer the first thing that comes to your mind.
Okay. Will do.
Morning, must have, coffee, matcha, meditation.
Alone time, I will say. When no one else is up in the house and I can have some quiet and silence to kind of get my day started. Yeah.
Excellent. And what's your favourite skin treatment to receive?
I have to say the Osmosis facial infusion. It is a fabulous treatment, but I'd love to add in a little bit of buccal massage to that. So that would be my go-to for sure.
And one skin ingredient you can't live without?
Yes, that's a great question. I think a skin ingredient that I can't live without, and I'm so blessed to have it in our range, is trioxylane. It's not very well known, but it's a stable oxygen molecule and it literally transforms what's happening on the epidermis and is applicable to so many things. We pull it out for sunburn, we pull it out for enlarged pores, we pull it out for texture. It's a brilliant hero ingredient for me, for sure.
And if you could give every practitioner out there and therapist one superpower, what would it be?
Curiosity.
And what's your go-to way to switch off after a busy training week?
Wow, Nick, these are great questions. I think, again, just having a little bit of alone time. I find I'm with people a lot and I really need that quiet time to kind of get my thoughts in order and reflect and set my intentions for the rest of the week. So definitely a little bit of that alone time, me time.
Excellent. And if your skin could talk, what would it say?
Can you please be consistent with your routine? I need those serums every single day, twice a day. Me first. That's probably what it would be saying.
I think everyone's skin would be saying that. And so we're going to start by talking about treating the skin holistically. What exactly does this mean?
Treating the skin holistically is something that I guess has been on my mind and heart for a really long time. I'm really blessed to be working with a range that was formulated by Dr. Ben Johnson, who has the same way of thinking about the skin. I believe our skin is a messenger. I don't believe that symptoms unique, and I don't think that they are there just because the skin breaks down. I think that there's a lot that the skin can tell us. And so treating the skin holistically is about trying to decode what those symptoms are telling you. And it doesn't mean that the same symptom across two different people will tell you the same thing, but we definitely need to dig deeper. And I think that the aesthetic market at the moment is very much about what we look like. And if we've got a beautiful looking aesthetic, then it, appears that we're healthy. But I'm finding more and more in my work that dysfunction is happening inside the body, and it's happening a lot earlier than what I used to find it happening in my 20s. There's a lot of autoimmune conditions and there's a lot of hormonal disruption and hormonal conditions that I just don't remember anyone suffering with when I was back at uni, 20, 25 odd years ago. So I think the skin is definitely a messenger that we need to start to decode and learn what it's trying to tell us and not just get rid of symptoms.
Yes. And you talk a lot about the skin-body connection.
Yes.
How do our internal systems like digestion, immunity, hormones, and stress play a role in our business?
Yeah, great question. And how long do we have to answer that? I think everything is intricately connected. We talk about inflammation, and even just yesterday I was completing an assignment about the gut-skin connection and how it plays a part in immunity in regards to a case study of a person who breaks out in acne after eating eggs, right? So we know that there are environmental factors and internal factors that can really change our physiology. We are living in a world that has a huge amount of environmental toxin exposure, and that toxin exposure accumulates over time. And so we start to see that in the skin in a compounding kind of way. And I think that when we look at gut health, I'm so glad that gut health is forefront of our conversations today with skin. Wasn't always the case, but when I was studying my Bachelor of Science / Psychology years and years ago, we had some very left of field directors that were running the course. It was a brand new course that VUT was putting on board so that they could compete with the really, the established universities, and they introduced the concept of psychoneuroimmunology right from the get-go of the beginning of that course, and understanding that our immune system alongside our hormonal system and our gut really works in synergy and provides a cascade effect. So I think treating the skin holistically is about being curious. I think curiosity is a superpower. Genuine curiosity can really create connection with people and let people know that you care because you want to know about them. You're curious to understand what is going on in their life and what kind of skin symptom are we seeing, and then asking the questions of, where did it come from and when did it appear and what can you remember in your life that has what was your life like prior to, say, for example, this acne presentation. I had a diagnosis of rheumatoid arthritis given to me, so I'm not going to claim that diagnosis, but it was given to me when I was 19. And I remember walking out of the rheumatologist's office and thinking, hang on, I wasn't born like this. So my body's obviously taken steps to get there. Surely we can reverse those steps. But prior to that diagnosis and the symptoms that flared up to put me into that position, I had 6 months of acne that came on at the age of 19. I'd never had acne before, and the acne that I had developed at that time lasted for a decent 6 to 7 months, and it was horrendous. It was cystic. It was all over my face. And in those days, I would never have connected the two, but obviously my skin was saying, hang on, there's an inflammatory process that's happening here that you need to pay attention to. And obviously for me, it came out in that way. But I think treating the skin holistically is about being curious about symptoms and not trying to get rid of them, but understanding that the body is giving you a message and we need to listen to that for sure.
Absolutely. And what are some of the most common skin conditions you see from internal imbalances?
Definitely one of the most common that we see is acne. I think the conversation about acne being caused by bacteria and being a topical skin condition is long gone, and I'm really glad about that. We see acne presenting with gut inflammation, leaky gut, or intestinal permeability. Intestinal permeability activates our immune cells in a different way to someone who has an intact gut. And so that lets off a cascade of events that eventually get through to the skin. So I think acne is a huge one. We still treat acne topically, and even medically. Again, another story I remember was speaking with a dermatologist early on in my Osmosis career. And we went through the presentation of acne and how to treat acne, and we were talking about the options that we can provide an alternative option to teenagers in terms of treatment rather than putting them directly on Accutane. And her response was, why would I do that? Accutane's easy. and fast, and it works. So why would I look for an alternative? And so I had to pick up my jaw off the floor because I had no response to her, because in my mind, I would never think about last case scenario that can then create further issues within the skin. And I think that's another part of a holistic treatment, is that we're not going to put the skin through treatments that can create further imbalance in the body. So we're really respectful of the body as a whole and the outcome we are wanting to achieve. But definitely acne, sorry, Nicole, to answer that. I think we find acne has a candida overgrowth component. I think the gut inflammation aspect alongside candida kind of go hand in hand. All of us, have candida at some levels, and it's an opportunistic type of pathogen, I'll call it. So it loves to grow and take over things, and we tend to see that in an acne presentation.
Yes, so true. I wonder if it's because of the training that medical practitioners go through, because I found that when I took my daughter, who would have been only about 12 at the time, maybe 13, I can't remember, to the doctor, and said that she was really unhappy with her acne. We were there for other reasons, but, brought that up. And the first thing that he said was, well, let's put her on the pill. And I'm thinking, oh, what? She's 12, or she might have just been 13, but she was very young at the time. And I'm thinking, oh, okay, that's the solution for acne?
Yeah. I agree. I don't think the training is there. And I don't think the training is there in nutrition. I don't think there is a view to looking at that root cause approach. I took my daughter recently to the doctor because she had a few sort of breathing and things like that after having the flu. And he whipped out a steroid and Ventolin and said, we're going to fix that for you. And I said, well, why is it happening in the first place? Oh, we don't know, but it's really common. And he turned around to my daughter and said, this will fix it and you won't have to worry anymore. I was like, okay, thanks. Don't worry about why and what the message is. And then the other aspect as well is that because we are doing symptom control with the pill, and I see this a lot, children go on the pill, then they are put on, say, a doxycycline antibiotic, and which that goes in for, 3 months, 6 months, which absolutely destroys the gut. And then afterwards, when the body still has the reason for presenting in acne or having that symptom, they're put on Accutane. And then I tend to see women in their early 30s who are struggling to conceive, which makes sense because those formative years of hormone development is completely changed and it's been disrupted by something like the pill. So the body hasn't even developed itself in the way that it should when it comes to hormonal health. And I think it then becomes a cycle. And then we have, our clients coming in and struggling with PIH or post-inflammatory hyperpigmentation and scarring from the acne. And yet they're still back at square one at that 13-year-old, 15-year-old, where they're like, why is this happening to me? So I think we really need to pay a lot more attention to how we treat, for sure.
And for practitioners listening, how can they do that? How can they integrate a more holistic mindset and treatment approach?
Great question. I think it requires, first of all, a change in mindset and bringing in that curiosity to try and get away from the medical model. The medical model has its place, for sure. And symptomatically, we need to treat sometimes. For example, in a case of acne that is quite overt and it's affecting a teen or a young adult's lifestyle and they're changing their life to accommodate their acne, let's work on those symptoms. But we also need to then say, okay, where is it coming from? I think education is getting there in terms of being available in Australia. The coursework that I'm doing at the moment, which is a Master's in Human Nutrition and Functional Medicine, so I'm nearly on the end of it. Really happy with that. That's out of a university in the US because the coursework and the information that I'm learning within this master's just is not available at an Australian university for now. So I think having the mindset change to say, okay, where's it coming from? Then the curiosity to start researching what kind of connection do we have to that? And then taking up some extra studies or looking for brand partners even that are in that space already, and being able to align with them and start working with them to achieve some of this root cause type of treatment.
And I just couldn't agree more. You've highlighted Sorry. You've highlighted the importance of working with nutraceutical ingredients and functional treatments. Can you give an example of how that creates long-term results for clients?
I can. So a nutraceutical is, I like to call the brand that I'm working with a topical nutrients. So these are topical products that are formulated in a way that the nutrition in those formulations are directly available to our skin, and our skin can use them and activate genes and growth factors and everything that the skin needs to activate with those ingredients within the form the skin understands. So I think if we're conscious of how to work on the skin topically, and the other point that I should have mentioned was without creating inflammation as well. So working with the body, ensuring the right ingredients are in there and the wrong ingredients are out. I mean, one of the things that I'm so passionate about now that I've had the opportunity to reach out to a few different groups is endocrine disruptive chemicals. There is a plethora of evidence of how much these EDCs, which really behave like synthetic estrogens in our body, can create a complete change in the way that our body functions. So I think making sure the ingredients formulate in the right way, they target a deeper than just top layers of the epidermis, and they target the function of the skin. So we're wanting to improve the function rather than remove the symptom. So that's the way that I think we need to work. And then also looking at targeted internals, whether it's supplements or elixirs that can specifically target a particular issue. And as an example, one of the conditions that we identify with at Osmosis is a liver-based acne presentation. So we call it hormonal acne when you see it along the jawline, on the neck, on the back, on the chest. And so when we're seeing acne present in this way, we know that the toxic load in the body is high, and the skin is being used an eliminatory organ to get it out really, really quickly so that those toxins are not recirculating or getting stuck in the lymph or creating an extra burden for the liver. And so if we can support the liver, if we can create an environment where we might be binding those toxins and allowing them to be metabolized properly through the phase 2 pathway of the liver, then we can take the burden off the skin and create an environment where the body can get rid of those toxins a lot faster. And then we work on acne in that way, because that will start to then heal.
I love that. And with the consultation, we have so many speakers in this industry who talk about the consultation process, from selling retail, from trying to upsell treatments. There's so many different perspectives, and some of them are fact-finding missions, but you are very different. And something that really stands out with the educational work that you do is a consultation as a mindful practice. Can you explain what that is and how your consultation process is different?
Yes, so our consultation process has been honed through a 10 to 15 years worth of consulting with clients, maybe a little bit more, and it draws on the principles of mindful interviewing, which in basic terms means that we're pulling out that curiosity, we're removing biases in our mind and our training and the way that we think things should go and what we think is going on with the skin, and creating an environment that is safe and really curious for that client that's sitting in front of us. And I think the mindful interviewing is a beautiful way to get the client talking. And it isn't just about gathering information for ourselves, but what I find with the mindful interviewing approach is that the client is able to clarify concerns for themselves. So the type of support that we provide our partners is there is a consultation component where we can tap into what really is going on with the skin, but further back is, what does the client think is going on with their skin, and how do they feel about their skin, and what is it that they would change if I gave them a magic wand and tapped it and gone, what would be happening there? And a beautiful example of this happened a few months ago when I was supporting one of our partners in a VIP event. And I had been consulting with a client that for them was a really tricky client. She would often take up a lot of time and not necessarily book in treatments or even purchase product, and then she'd go and purchase online, which is, definitely a valid concern that a lot of clients have in our market at the moment. And she came to me and said that, just to keep it anonymous, that she was allergic to a particular animal. So she'd bought these beautiful animals that she absolutely loved, and she'd broken out in like a dermatitis, almost psoriatic type of rash all over her face and her body. And so the doctor that she saw told her that it's to do with these animals that she'd purchased. They were pets and she had to get rid of them, which was huge for her. And she was in her mid-30s and absolutely huge. And so I said to her, okay, let's bring that back. So when I asked her about her skin, she told me about all of these reactions, and then she revealed about this allergy and response to these pets that she had, and how absolutely devastating it was that she had to get rid of them. And then I said, okay, so bring me back before you got those pets. When did the allergy start to happen? When did you notice it? So we started going back, and with curious questions. I was so curious to see what was going on. She ended up revealing that she'd had this excruciatingly traumatic event as a child. I won't go into what the details were, but she shared that traumatic event, and I said to her, "You're not allergic to your pets." I said, your system is in fight, flight or freeze, and it's been like that for 25 years. And she sort of started tearing up and she said, nobody's ever said that to me. And so then we discussed what happens in the body, what happens to the mind, how the skin is involved in that. And we started to peel back the onion about all of the symptoms. She also revealed she had PCOS, and she'd struggled with endo, and she'd struggled with infertility. And it was like you peeled back the onion, and gosh, the onion had a lot of layers to it. But in the end, she walked out with bookings, and she also purchased the whole routine that I had recommended for her. And the owner of the business said to me, gosh, she's such a tough nut to crack, and you cracked her. Now, I didn't crack her. I was just curious, and I really wanted to understand how she felt about her skin. Otherwise, the steroids, the topical steroids and the antibiotics and everything else that she was put on is just a temporary Band-Aid. And for her, what we were looking at doing is treating her from a quantum physics perspective, which is a little bit unique to, I guess, Osmosis, and working on that emotional component and that trapped trauma that sits in the tissues that can then create that ongoing change in the body and the skin. But I think the mindful interviewing process, I love it. There is a downfall. It takes time. And, we know in business that time is money. And so the skill to be able to incorporate mindful interviewing within a time frame is something you would practice. This client took me an hour. Luckily for me, I had the other clients waiting and they were happy to wait. But we were able to get there. And so perhaps our industry might need to look at how much emphasis they place on that consultation. And it's not just a 5 minute at the beginning of the treatment and then 5 minutes at the end of the treatment. It might be that's a huge part of that connection with the client. And after that consultation, you only really do it to that degree once, and it sets you up for that journey with that client that you're seeing. Very powerful.
Wow. I can really see how your psychology background has played such an important role in your life and work.
It does. And psychology was a default for me. I wasn't planning on studying psychology. I wanted to be in a fighting corruption and injustice. And that was that's what I was interested in. And, in those days, I didn't get the TER score to get into law. And I think that psychology was my next path. Well, I'd need to understand people, and I know that's going to help me in my life. And I'm so glad I got the lower, not as high as what I should have for law, because it's really thrown me into a path of wellness, which I had never considered. I mean, the first time I ever learnt about a cell was in first year uni in biology. And I walked out of there thinking, where do you get this information from? How do people know about cells? Because my mind was always down the legal and financial path. And I think, life has a way of really putting you into the right position. And I couldn't see myself doing anything else. But psychology is, amazing. And we use that with our brand partners. We go through some disc profiling in terms of understanding what kind of client you're sitting across. We all have had those clients where we walk out of the treatment or the consultation and we feel really yucky and intimidated and, oh my gosh, I can't get through to that client. That client, I can't connect. And sometimes that can bring a therapist down. And so what we had a few of that type of conversation happen with our brand partners. And so I put together a presentation that incorporated the interviewing, but also disc profiling and understanding what motivates people from a buying position, and how we can also understand ourselves and be able to communicate better. Because if you've got a nurturing personality, which a lot of our therapists and nurses do, that's why they're in the position that they're in, and you're dealing with the dominant, strong, step over everybody kind of CEO, finance guru that just wants to get a result and doesn't care who gives him the result, it can be really tough to connect. And so if we understand people, life is just so much better when we understand people, because then we can understand ourselves. Yeah.
Absolutely. And some specialists, or I guess very popular high-end practitioners, can be really intimidating. How would you recommend that they be more present and empathetic and approachable in their consultations?
Oh, gosh, I hate to sound like a broken record, but I think the curiosity is important, and stripping away your own ego. Who's got time for ego? Everybody can pick up on someone that puts themselves in a position where it's about me. It's I. And I'm going to do this for you. And I'm going to tell you what to do. I mean, that was the experience I had at 19 with my rheumatologist at the time. I had spoken to a lecturer of mine and showed him my hands. And at the time, all of my knuckles had blown up and my hands were super, super painful and, didn't look great, and was referred to a naturopath. And this is the 90s, right? So no online and no information about this. And I went out 2-hour drive to find this naturopath, and he said to me, well, why don't not take the medication that I was given. I was given 3 lots of medication that I was told I'd be on for the rest of my life. He said, don't not take it, but see if that doctor will work with me, and then we can work on an internal approach nutritionally, and he can work on the medical approach. And he said to me, how dare you? How dare you even suggest this? And I said, oh, no, he's actually a GP from Europe, but wanted to practice naturopathically, because in Europe, for people that don't know, many GPs or many doctors actually also receive an integrative or naturopathic qualification. In the US, you have 2 streams of medicine. You have an ND stream, which is a naturopathic doctor, and an MD stream, which is a medical doctor, and their original training is very similar. They both can end up in hospital as a registrar and work through that medical model. And so that rheumatologist said, how dare you? And I said, he's got his GP and he's got a medical degree. And he said, probably from a cornflakes packet. And he said, if you're not going to take the medication, he said, don't come back. And that was it. As a 19-year-old with never having been ill in my life, I didn't even have a GP. I went to see my mum's GP who'd referred me to him. So I think that ego and being someone that places themselves above that person needs to really be stripped away. And we still see it occasionally. But one of the practical ways that I suggest to our clients is that We are sitting there wanting to learn more about the person in front of us. We strip everything that we have. And we know that in aesthetics and in our industry, sometimes, we can sell from our own pocket. Well, I'm not going to recommend this because it's too expensive and I don't want them to feel like they have to spend money. And all the way to, well, I know what they need. I can see all the pigment. That's their problem. So I've already organized a, 6 treatment plan for you where we're going to do this, this, and this. And the client hasn't really even told you what it is that they want to change about their skin. So I think removing ego and really bringing in that curiosity and understanding that we want to create a connection with someone, and we might be the expert in our training, but when we join that with the client's experience, then we are both on that journey together.
Absolutely. And are there any key questions that you find you frequently use that practitioners could integrate into their consultation?
There are actually. We've got about 5 questions that we teach in our coursework with our Osmosis brand partners. And those questions are open-ended questions and they feed off each of the question prior to. So you might have a consultation form that clients fill in and you've got those quantitative questions, tick your 3 concerns and tick all the products that you're using and write any other comments that you're wanting to share with us and your medical history. So you've got all of that. And I think that's a great starter. But putting that aside, and in my clinic that I owned years and years and years ago, when I was way, way, way young and inexperienced, what we did was I would sit down with clients and say, okay, I've got all of this information you've provided. I just want to hear it from you. Just in your own words, tell me a little bit about your skin. And that's an open-ended question that then allows you to observe the client's body language as well. So if you were to say, tell me a little bit about your skin, and I go, oh, there's a lot going on in my head about my skin, so it really impacts me. So already as a therapist, I know, okay, her skin's really important to her. So I need to note that in the way that I interact. And so the first question is, tell me a little bit about your skin. And if you're needing to tease out more information, you can ask about, you can bring in questions like, if you had that magic wand and you could tap it, what would happen? Would all of your scarring go away? Would your skin look younger? If someone asks me, tell me about your skin, I'll be like, everything's going south. How do we pull it back up to the north? And as a therapist, I'd be thinking, okay, elasticity is huge for her, right? So we need to make sure that we target elasticity, maybe collagen, but elasticity is her concern. So that's the first question. The second question is, and obviously you're quantifying. So tell me a little bit about your skin. And then you're quantifying what you're saying to what you're hearing from that client. So to me, it sounds like elasticity is probably a concern that you have. We're definitely thinking of aging, and within that aging profile, it's about elasticity. It might be collagen, stimulation, the texture of your skin. Does that sound about right? And then question 2 is, tell me what you're doing to address that. And what have you done in the past? And so then the client starts to think about, I've got about 25 products in my bathroom. I love the way they smell. I love the way they feel, but I still have this issue. And so the client is gathering information in their mind subconsciously, and then we are gathering that too. So tell me what you're doing. This is the time to pull out the routine, but not just what they're using. Are they actually doing it? Give me your day. What does your day look like? You get up in the morning. When does the skin routine fit in there? And then you'll get the client say, I don't really use it because I do it on a weekend because I don't have time. And then you pick up that I'm time poor type thing. So skin is important to me, but I'm going to need something that's effective but really simple. So that's question 2. And then question 3 will feed off of that, but it creates an environment of curiosity of, are things working? So how have these interventions worked for you? How's your skincare working for you? Do you notice changes? Are the changes enough to meet your expectation? What about the 6 sessions of needling you did last year? How did your skin respond to those needling sessions? Did you find that you got the results that you wanted, or what were some side effects of that. And that gives you the understanding of, okay, her skin might not be healing as quickly as it should, or there might be a sensitivity that's left over from that. So that's question 3. And then question 4 and 5, I find are really important once that information is gathered. Question 4 is, what would you like to achieve by seeing me and coming into our clinic? What are your expectations? What would you like to achieve next week, next month, in 3 months, in 6 months, in 12? And you can quantify that with the conversation, but the question is, tell me about what you'd like to achieve and how I can help you do that. And that means you're setting expectations, or you're finding the client's expectation when she says, you know what, I'm 47, but I want my skin to be 21 years old and I want it done in a month, and I expect you to do it. And that way you can then bring those expectations into reality and also provide an indication of how long that will take. Maybe if results are really important, they need to come and see you every 2 weeks for treatments, and they need to be on a 5-step, 6-step routine. Whereas if the results are something that the client kind of wants as longevity, I want my skin to just work really well and get better as we go, maybe she doesn't need to see you every 2 weeks, but need to see you every month or 6 weeks. So that's question 4. And then question 5 is a tough question for therapists to ask. So I think you would phrase it in a way that is conducive to the client that's sitting in front of you. But it would be, what are you able to invest, or what are you willing to invest, and how much are you willing to invest to achieve these goals? And that question isn't about putting the client on the spot. That question is about understanding what their time commitments are like and what their budget commitments are like, and marrying them to the expectation, so that then when you do present a plan, or when you do present the products they need to use at home, it doesn't come as a shock. There's a reason behind everything that you're presenting to them. The client can't really, or shouldn't really, question, oh, do you really think I need that? Oh, I don't know. It's a bit expensive, because you've already covered all of that. And then you have the data, I guess, that you've gathered to support what we want to do. And I think that they're the 5 questions that we tend to really workshop. And as soon as we do these sessions, you've got therapists like, all these lights go off. Oh my gosh, that's that client, and that's that client. That's what I'm going to do next time. And yeah, it's a good way to gather information for sure.
And with your clinics that have adopted this approach and embraced the 5 questions, have you seen an impact in client retention results?
We have actually. And I think what I love to see first is the impact on the therapist, because the confidence of the therapist goes up, and they realize that they have those skills and they can build those skills. So the first part is, seeing therapists really enjoying the job and finding that they are able to meet KPIs. And they are able to rebook clients and take them through a journey. And the second part of it from a client retention perspective is that we are in a very vulnerable industry. We're lying on the bed half naked, hands are all over us. We give a lot of information to our therapists that's quite vulnerable in terms of how we feel and what our skin is doing. A lot of clients will share about their health journey. And so I think clients want to develop a relationship with their therapist that they can trust. So it goes a long way into developing trust, and you absolutely see client retention because the client is then invested because they see that the therapist is invested. So it's beneficial almost in a 3-pronged approach for the client, for the therapist, and for the business as a whole.
Definitely. It must be wonderful for you to see the confidence of those therapists.
Love it. I get text messages all the time. Oh my gosh, this is the client that I had come in, and look, and I've figured out this is the problem. We've put them on a small routine, and look at the results in 2 weeks. Like I still do, but obviously now we have BDMs that look after certain states and certain clients, but I still get my clients, texting me and saying, wow, just wow, this is what we've achieved, and thank you so much.
That is so magical, and how wonderful and rewarding.
Yeah. Absolutely. It is so rewarding. And even with new business, once we have when people generally come to us because they either have gone through their own journey of health and they're realizing that there's lots of gaps in treating symptomatically only. And they'll come out and say, okay, what can we do with the skin and can we bring a holistic approach into our clinics? And even just speaking to clients that are just inquiring and opening up the conversation about how you have so many tools available to you, not from just a consultation perspective, but then you can bring in the treatment capacity once you have all of that information because, a lot of therapists are great at consulting. A lot of clinics place a lot of emphasis, not all of them, but for those that are really fabulous at consulting, sometimes it's the lack of tools. What do I do with all of that information? How do I affect it? And a lot of times, just recently actually in Adelaide, I had one business that inquired and said, well, normally I just refer out to naturopaths and I just refer out to someone else and I kind of lose the control of the skin. And sometimes these clients will come back after seeing a naturopath as well as seeing skin and we're not really seeing movement in the skin because the treatment protocols are probably different and may not be targeted to skin. And so even hearing new business operators say, I know there's something more because I've felt it and I need it for my body and my skin. How can we incorporate? And then you provide these tools and a really great, almost like we have a skin map and we provide the tools to understand the root cause of based on what symptoms you're seeing. And it's life-changing for them in a business as well. So that's for us, you just can't get any better. Yeah. Can't get better satisfaction.
It's wonderful to see how you help support clinics evolve from that product-based model to a purpose-based model.
That's a great way to put it, Nick. That's actually fabulous. I might have to steal that off you. It is a purpose-based model, yes. And we have treatments in clinic, we have topical skincare, we have wellness. And I think that's right. It's the purpose-driven approach to treating skin while really respecting the innate intelligence of the body. Absolutely.
And what advice would you give business owners or practitioners wanting to take the next step to go from that surface level services to transformative results and holistic care?
Well, without bringing in a shameless plug, I would say align yourself with brands that understand that and find a brand that really understands the in-depth approach to treating the skin. Obviously, Osmosis is in that space and Dr. Ben Johnson has been in that space in the last probably 20, 25 years. And as a brand, Osmosis brings in traditional Chinese medicine, Ayurveda, quantum physics, and the medical model approach to have that science-backed approach to skin, but to be able to draw from the body's innate function. And so I think align yourself with the brand, whether it's ours or whether it's someone else's. I think we have to go past that typical top-down approach we have in aesthetics. Not to say that there isn't a place for that. There is a small place for that, but we 100% have to start looking deeper. And even with aging and managing aging, I mean, as we age, our treatments are going to need to be more intense to deliver the same result. Why? Because we lose the capacity as we age, probably at about 1% per year from 25, 26 onwards, to produce growth factors, to produce and use nutrients properly. Angiogenesis is something that, we are struggling with as we age. And those capillary networks and creating blood vessels is where that oxygen and nutrients come from. And I mean, with aging, one of the definitions of aging is a reduction in blood flow to whatever organ it is. And we know if there is a reduction, we will lose the capacity to heal the way we used to heal. And so I think even with when you're doing a top-down approach and you're using those intense treatments, it's an oxymoron, but you're accelerating the aging process because the body goes into almost like a low-level chronic inflammatory response. And as Dr. Ben says, you could have something going on in your finger. The whole body knows about it. It's not just your finger that's inflamed and has an issue. The whole body is activated to treat that inflammation. And what we want to do is not create inflammation unless there is an acute component to it and it's very, very temporary, so that it can heal something that we want to heal. But in aesthetics, like, we're constantly creating that. So I think even in aging, if we can take that top-down approach, if we need to at the beginning, when the symptoms of aging are quite overt and someone really, doesn't like the way that they look, but ensuring that we add in the long-term approach for that as well, and support mitochondrial health, support vascular health, and look at the health of organs that contribute to the way that the skin looks and functions as well. I don't know if I answered your question. I think I went on a tangent. Sorry. But you can contact us if you like, osmosisbeauty.com.au, and I will, Nick, you'll have my details so you can put them on all of the podcast bits and give them out to people. We have a beautiful team that are extremely passionate about your business, not just about growing osmosis within a business. I have never taken the approach of osmosis first as a business, because as a business owner, I know how hard it was when I had my clinic. And it's not about somebody pushing you to order their products. It's about providing solutions that work within the context of business. And so we will do that organically as a team. If you've got other brands in your business, then we'll come in and say, okay, where can Osmosis fit? And really support the complete growth of business rather than just an osmosis approach.
That's wonderful and a great answer. So finally, we'd love to know if we can let us in, what is next for Skin Suite Australia? And please tell us about any upcoming events or what's been happening and what we can get involved in next year.
Well, great timing. We have Dr. Ben Johnson coming. We've just secured the dates that he's coming to Melbourne. He'll be here from March the 1st to the 3rd, and we have a fabulous 2-day event planned, or 3-day event possibly planned, for our partners, but also anyone that is interested. If you have not heard Dr. Ben speak, I encourage you to have a listen to his podcasts with an open mind. He is certainly not mainstream. He's certainly very left of field, and will bring in concepts that you think, oh, how is that even possible? But I kid you not, it's like he's 10 years ahead. At the moment, exosomes are a huge buzz, right? So the world is ready for exosomes. Dr. Ben released his exosome growth factor serum 15, 20 years ago, I'd like to say. And it took years of development for him to get there, but he was already there. And I think that where skin is going now is, if you don't have a wellness component that is quite targeted and you don't have those tools to dig deeper, I think clinics are going to be left behind. And because temporary treatment results are usually temporary, we want to make them permanent. Yeah, so we'll pop all the details in. We're just getting ready and planning this fabulous event with Dr. Ben. So he will be here and you can get to ask all the questions you want to ask. But before you do that, I highly encourage you to listen to some of his podcasts. So it's Ask Dr. Ben, hashtag Ask Dr. Ben, and you can hear him on your Apple podcast or Spotify. And I challenge you, if there's something that he says that rubs you up the wrong way, please text me, call me, contact me, and let's chat about it.
Dr. Ben is fantastic. Alfie and I have been so lucky to have seen him speak live in person in Sydney, and he was phenomenal. And the whole room was just dead silent, hanging off every word he said.
Yeah. 100%, because I think we kind of know that what he's saying makes sense. And that's the biggest thing I get from, I've had the opportunity, and thank you, Nick, because you're the one that pushed and poked and prodded me to speak at the ABM in Melbourne to fill a little gap that you had. And so I didn't do it because I wanted to. I did it because I really love and respect you and what you do for the industry. And I think the biggest response I get is, what you said actually makes sense. Right? And that's what I think really drives people, because we can be told that this is the reason why something is happening from a symptom down approach. And like we know, well, hang on. What do you mean? How can that happen? It doesn't make sense. So when you start to connect those dots from an internal versus a topical approach, I think it resonates with people, and you start asking questions, and when things make sense and you already have the questions because you're seeing clients their skin conditions are not resolving in clinic, or they come back. So you've done all this work and then the client comes back and their skin condition flares up. You have to ask the question why. And he's really good at asking why. He's really good at figuring out connections. And he's also so honest and transparent. If he doesn't know, he'll tell you. Actually, I haven't quite got that right now. And we're not really sure about that right now. So he's, very honest and transparent. He gives his email address out to everybody, and says, contact me. He's actually very active with every single therapist around the world that uses his product. So if you were a stockist of Osmosis, you can access him through a closed Facebook group and ask him questions and send through difficult to treat clients. And he's so responsive. So I think he keeps himself grounded, and he really works in with those who use the products he creates. And if there are concerns or changes that are needed, or there's a skin condition that he hasn't quite touched, he will start to look into that. Yeah, so he's fantastic. Love him.
So cool. So now to wrap up, just another 5 quick questions. First thing that comes to mind, most underrated skill in the aesthetic industry?
Connection.
Favorite quote or mantra when things get hectic?
And my favorite quote ever is the Nike quote, or Nike. Just do it. I think we get paralysis through analysis. And I just find sometimes it's not that deep, which my daughter says to me all the time, Mum, it's not that deep. So just do it. Just get it done.
And what's the best piece of business advice you've ever received?
The best piece of business advice that I like to live by and also have received is, do not burn your bridges. I think emotions can really get into business decisions. We all have our personalities and our agendas and our needs. And I think it's very easy to get emotional, especially when you're in disagreement or you're in competition. I don't see our brand as having any competition. I see there's room for everyone, and we have a very nice niche that we love and we're passionate about. But I think don't burn your bridges, because you never know where you're going to meet that person and how you're going to be able to collaborate with them in future. And things change in life, whatever's creating emotions and distress now might be completely gone in a year's time. And so you think, oh, why did I react that way? And why did I burn that bridge? So yeah, don't burn your bridges.
Oh, that's such a good one. And one of the things I actually loved about Aesthetic Business Masters was all of the exhibitors got along so well, exchanged details, have partnered with each other. It's incredible.
I agree. And I think you made that happen, because I think sometimes the way that you run an event and the feel in that event, there's another word I'm looking for, but I can't think about it. But I think it comes from the top, and we all want to collaborate. There's business for everybody. And if we understand that we are stronger together in our industry, rather than trying to have a tall poppy syndrome and we're the best and you're the best and she's not the best, it doesn't work, and it provides unnecessary stress. Yeah, I agree with you. I think it was great to collaborate with and meet so many different businesses.
I'd love to say it was all me, but it wasn't. It was just an accidental thing that happened. And having been to other events that, are much bigger and overseas and whatnot, it can be a little bit like Hungry Hippos on the exhibitor floor, where you're literally poaching people from each other, and it can be so overwhelming. But even for the delegates, it can be a bit like, oh gosh. So it was just something that happened that was just so wonderful and heartwarming.
Yeah, it definitely wasn't like that at the ABM. We were all, and I, remember saying, why don't you go and see so-and-so? Because they have a great that part of things. And yeah, you have to. I mean, we all have a life and we all need connection. Don't burn bridges.
And if you weren't in this industry, what would you be doing?
Well, I probably would be one of two things. Either in a courtroom arguing against injustice or someone being treated poorly, or I would probably be working in clinic from a naturopathic, health-based nutritional way to support healing for mums and children, actually. That's what's on my heart at the moment. I think if mum's healthy, the whole family's healthy. And that's probably my heart at the moment. And I can do that through this industry with skin because we see a lot of women in this industry that struggle and we can get deeper. But yeah, they're probably one of those two things.
And what's one thing that you'd tell your younger self starting out again in this industry?
It's a great question, Nick. Gosh, these are fabulous questions. I think what I've learned a little bit too late in life, I started doing this when I turned 40, is to look at goals in the future. Where do I want to be 5 years from now and 10 years from now? I did get asked that when I was interviewing as a medical sales rep for one of the pharma companies when I was 21 or 22. And I was like, how do I even answer that question? What a dumb question, Where do you see yourself in 5 years' time? I don't know, traveling, having fun. But I think it really makes a difference in the decisions that you make if you have a goal that you can visibly see. And that's that when I started doing that, that was when I went back to study and I thought, okay, I want to be helping people when I'm 60 and 70 rather than, doing what I'm doing or trying to hustle and be in sales. I love sales. It seems to come natural to me, but it might not be something I want to do in my later years, and I want to make a different impact. And so I think what I would tell my younger self is have fun, but really look at yourself at 30 or 25 and where do you want to be, and make sure that some of the decisions that you make are conducive to having that type of life when you're a little bit older. Tell my daughter all the time. She doesn't take it at the moment because she's 15, but I'm sure the seeds are planting as we go.
Definitely. Tatyana, this has been such an inspiring conversation. Thank you so much for your time today. You've reminded us that skin health isn't just about what we apply topically. It's about understanding the person in front of us, their body and their mindset. So for practitioners, that's where real transformation begins, both for your clients and your business. Thank you so much for joining us today on the Aesthetic Business Masters podcast.
Thanks, Nick, for having me. You are amazing. And I'd like to say I absolutely love what you're doing in the industry. And it's very much needed. Opening conversations, connecting people, creating fun buzz events that are not, all kind of me only, very collaborative. And I absolutely love what you're doing. So thank you for having me on. It's been an absolute honor.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Aesthetic Business Masters podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please follow, rate, and review the show. It really helps us to reach more clinic owners and professionals who are passionate about growth and excellence in aesthetics. You can listen to our episodes on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or at the Aesthetic Business Masters .com.au/podcast. Follow us on Instagram and Facebook for updates and behind the scenes conversations. My name's Nicole Montgomery and I'll see you next time.